We are live to YouTube. We are live on show.
Welcome, bienvenue en ligne. I'd like to begin by thanking our media and broadcast partners who are covering tonight's meeting. And begin the meeting in a good way, as we always do, by acknowledging with respect that we are in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Bawating. Bawating is home to Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. That, Madam Clerk.
I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Vezo-Allen, resolved that minutes of regular council meeting of March 18, 2024 be approved.
All in favor? That carries.
And under agenda item 4, declaration of pecuniary interest. Councillor Spina is not in the room. He has declared with respect to the report about the tourism funds as one of the projects he's involved with. 719.
Any other declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none.
I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Vezo-Allen, resolved that the agenda for April 8, 2024 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? That carries.
We do have a planning application. It's application A424ZOP at 44 Great Northern Road. There's a motion by Councillors Gardy and Vezo-Allen, resolved that the report of the junior planner dated April 8, 2024 concerning Planning Act application A424ZOP, 44 Great Northern Road be received, and that council approve official plan amendment number 251 by way of a notwithstanding clause to permit up to 450 square meters of office space upon the area to be rezoned, and rezone a portion of the subject property approximately 59 meters by 47.6 meters as shown in the attached land use map from shopping center zone to general commercial zone with a special exception to increase the maximum gross floor area for office uses outside of the downtown from 300 square meters to 450 square meters, and that the legal department be requested to prepare the necessary bylaws to effect the same.
Mr. Tenazzo, if I could get you to provide a quick summary of the application.
Thank you, Mayor Shoemaker. The subject property is the Cambrian Mall, and the specific area to be rezoned is a portion of the parking lot along Great Northern Road just south of Propane Plus. The application is to relocate the BMO bank branch from within the Cambrian Mall to a standalone structure on the area to be rezoned. The recommendation is to approve, and Dave Urso is present to speak to this on behalf of the applicant. Thank you.
Welcome to council, Mr. Urso. Anything to add to the planning report that is before us tonight?
Staff and the public, the council report was succinct. It just describes exactly what the intent of the Cambrian Mall is at this time. This is the first hurdle. The severance we'll be dealing with the committee adjustment subsequently, as the property wasn't zoned properly for the separate standalone structure.
Okay, thank you. Council, are there any questions on the application? Is anyone in the gallery here to speak in favor of the application? Is anybody here wishing to speak against the application? Okay, seeing none. We can have a vote on the matter. All in favor? Carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Urso.
to item 6.1, the KPMG Shared Services Review. Tim Swanson, Senior Manager Advisory Services, is in attendance by Zoom, I believe.
Swanson? There's a presentation in our agenda. Is there a, there we go. Looks like we're working on getting the presentation going. Mr. Swanson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Actually, sorry for the technical difficulties there, joining. I think Bruce Peaver is going to kick off our presentation.
Welcome to council.
And Bruce, we're not hearing your audio. Bruce, I wonder if you would mind if I started. Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry, everybody. Maybe if we can go to the 2 slides in. Just very quickly, we're here to speak about the shared service review that we did when we looked at services provided or performed rather by the city and by the police service, and asking the question, obviously, if there's opportunities to either improve service levels or reduce costs by sharing some of the responsibilities for those services. Specifically, we were looking at HR services, finance services, dispatch services, and in the course of those 3, the original RFP contemplated including the ambulance as part of dispatch. They were not interested in participating in the study, so the scope did change to focus on the opportunities between fire and police. We'll go to the next slide there. Just a couple of findings that we're pulling out of the report that help set the stage for some of our recommendations. Probably the first and most important is that when we looked at in aggregate the size of the HR and finance departments relative to the organizations they support, they were pretty similar. So we weren't seeing a huge difference in overall, if you will, efficiency in terms of the number of, the size of the organization supported relative to the FTEs required to do so. We did see on the police service side level that if we were to use FTEs as the measure, the police service finance team is supporting an organization that has more FTEs. That may not be the best measure we recognize to single out for finance. Certainly on the HR side, where FTEs count is more relevant, we see a very comparable weighting. A second thing that we feel is very important to highlight is that there is already a very high level of collaboration between the 2 organizations. It may not be as formalized or as transparent or evident, rather, as one might expect, but it is definitely there. And so, for examples, on the human resource side, we see that there's sharing with respect to WSIB IB cost processing, disability claims. On the finance side, we see there's collaboration related to invoice payments and budget discussion. So quite a bit of back and forth already happening. Go to the next slide. Another key observation that kind of helps set the tone for some of the recommendations is that there is a difference in how the respective support organizations are functioning within the city and within the police service. So we see within the police service, we have much smaller HR and finance teams having to support, do all of the functions, all of the HR functions. And so the team tends to be more generalists. On the city side, we have larger HR and finance teams, so we see some specialization amongst their teams. On both sides, we saw that there are opportunities to explore further automation to reduce the amount of workload associated with some of the more transactional type activities that the HR and the finance teams they undertake. So setting those sort of key observations as context, we'll move into the recommendations. In terms of the finance and procurement side of things, the first is that we have a fair bit of communication already underway between the two groups. It is not necessarily formalized, and it is not necessarily following a structured agenda. So there have been times where some communication has fallen through the gaps. And so our first recommendation is let's just formalize that. So we have recommended in our report a quarterly meeting that outlines a standing agenda as well as some topical agenda items for each quarter. The second is we notice that where you have a team of generalists on the police service side, that has given rise to the situation where the finance manager is actually performing quite a number of transactional tasks, taking away from that individual's capacity to be able to provide more strategic advice and services to the organization. So there's an opportunity here, we think, to redirect some of that individual's capabilities towards more the value add type services. And that would be achieved by looking at some changes to how the existing functions, more transactional functions, are undertaken. The third is to establish a more formal understanding of what is being performed between the two organizations, and this would be done starting with a higher level MOU to set sort of the context, and then a specific service level agreement between the two organizations, so that it's very clear and transparent what each organization is doing for the other. And should situations change, volumes change significantly, or other process changes result in a change in workload on either side, that service level agreement serves as a baseline. Finally, we do recognize, given the nature of specialization that the city has, they have a great deal of understanding and expertise in the area of procurement that the police services just doesn't have. And so there was a recognition that here's an opportunity that the city can support the police service in providing some of that advice and some of the resources, et cetera. This is not undertaking the procurement function for the police service, but rather acting as an advisor and a resource to them. On the next slide, we see some parallels with the human resource side. So again, formalizing the communication, there's some interesting practices that each organization has developed, and making sure that that formally those are there's an opportunity to exchange and collaborate on some of those things, as well as they do have common issues and areas of of interest, and so having a standing agenda, or standing a meeting would assist with that communication. Again, we see a similar thing with the more generalized nature of the police service resources. We see that the HR manager is doing, again, a fair bit of transaction processing. And so we see an opportunity here through implementing more self-serve type functions and processes to free up some of the HR manager's time to provide more value add to the organization. And finally, again, a parallel. We're with the service level agreement. Let's establish what the baseline is between the two organizations and what they're providing. The last recommendation deals with dispatch, and this is a bigger change compared to the rest. Here we did see that there's an opportunity to look at combining the dispatch of fire and police under the police service. Some of the key drivers for that are next gen 911 and the required upgrades that both organizations have to undertake, but particularly the fire service would have to undertake quite a significant upgrade in its technology and systems to be able to accommodate next gen 911 requirements. So there's an immediate synergy with respect to that. But some of the practices that NextGen enables also require critical mass of dispatch, and bringing a fire service or an FTE that is currently with the fire service, and having that position as part of the police dispatch would give the entire dispatch function a little more flexibility in how they perform dispatch. Separating, for example, the call-taking function from the dispatch function. We see there being a slight potential financial benefit to doing this as well. Those were our recommendations, and in the report, I'd welcome any questions on them.
Councillor Bezuilen?
Thank you very much. As the person who penned this resolution, both here and at Police Services, I want to thank both sets of staff in working collaboratively for this report with KPMG. So thank you very much. I want to start with page 15 from the actual report under quick wins. Love that title, quick wins. Hopefully they are. So my question is probably actually for Ms. Ottolani in terms of HR and the WSIB claims and the complex disability claims. I know when the chief was here doing the budget presentation, there was the statement that approximately 20% of the Police Services Association are on some sort of leave. So, Ms. Ottolani, with having a more formal collaboration in terms of your HR team and the HR team at Police Services, of which, Police Services, it's 115.5 employees per one FTE supported. For us at the city, it's 113.3 FTEs being supported per employee. Do you see, in terms of this quick win, a ability to resolve some of these WSIB and complex disability claims in a more timely fashion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bezuilen, potentially. Disability claims, as you know, especially those having to do with longer term TSD and things like that, are very involved and take a great deal of time and effort to try and get the employees to the point where they're able to return to work. So I know at this point, what we're doing is a lot of collaboration with best practices. So what we've tried potentially with different situations, for example, when we had the EMS portfolio, our team is sharing the police services, and vice versa. When they have questions about what have we tried, we were happy to answer those. We've also extended some consideration to, you might want to check with this consultant that we've used because we had success doing X, Y, and Z. So there's a lot of conversation going back and forth, and we do hope, obviously, that it brings people in cases to more resolutions.
And then I guess my next question probably is for our consulting team. In terms of those collaborative agreements, between finance and HR, how do you see those rolling out, and what do you feel will be the best practices in the agreements between the organizations?
Okay, so you're referring specifically to the service level agreements as opposed to the collaborative meetings?
Correct.
Right. And the service level agreements do not have to be overly onerous or complex, but I do think they need to very clearly state what is being done currently between the two organizations, and where there is an expectation associated with those services that should be outlined as well. So, is there an expected turnaround time or lead time for information, for example? That should be included in there. The most important thing is once we know what is being provided and at the current volumes and to what service level it's being provided, then should things change, there's an opportunity to have a conversation about how best to deal with those changes.
Okay, thank you. And my final and last question is for Ms. Schell. In terms of our finance department, working with the Finance Department of Police Services, I know that there already is some collaborative efforts in terms of drafting the budget and that sort of thing. But in terms of forecasting, looking for gaps, efficiencies, how do you feel your team would be able to support police services team and vice versa.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bezoal, and you are correct in stating that there is some communication going on right now, especially in the budget area. But where the downfall is in the quarterly reporting, et cetera, and best practices that we can share. There has been some ad hoc best practices that my counterpart there would speak about. But formalizing it, I think, would be good, and having the quarterly meetings is highly recommended so that we can continue on that path.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have any further questions on the report.
Councillor Bezoal, Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Chief Johnson. Chief Johnson, number 3.1 in the recommendations is to transition the dispatcher from fire into police services. But it is my understanding that the fire department dispatch is normally a firefighter that is on light duty. Am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Caputo. No, we do have sometimes people on modified duty in that position, but typically it's a cadet or the most junior individual on the platoon assigned to the communications room.
So will this affect you keeping firefighters working on modified duty if the dispatch job is modified in this way?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Caputo. No, we have other positions that we can put them into modified work. We have other options we can provide.
Okay, so this won't affect your union at all?
No, but I will say that I'd be cautious to speak deeper into it because it is subject to the collective agreement and we are in bargaining, so it would be difficult to answer any questions further than that.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Staying with the same topic to Chief Johnson. What is the, I noticed in the report from KPMG that they identify a future capital budget of $1.5 million for an NG 911 compliant fire dispatch station. What year is that projected to potentially occur?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Dufour. The deadline to be compliant for NG 911 is March in 2025.
March 2025. Okay. So is there, will there be a report forthcoming to either, well, to this council and to the Police Services Board examining what the next steps are to investigate whether such a shared coordinated dispatch should be explored? It just seems to me that KPMG has pointed to an 18-month timeline here. And if our deadline for NG 911 is about the same amount, I would expect that we need a report on next steps in pretty short order.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Dufour. Our goal moving forward is to be compliant for the deadline. Whatever takes place through this, the recommendations or collective bargaining, we'll just have to put in place after the fact. But right now we have no choice but to make sure we're compliant for that deadline, whether dispatches with the fire service or we shuffle it to the police service.
For sure. Just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we not be compliant with NG 911, but if it's either because what I'm seeing here is either we spend, and correct me if I'm wrong, either we spend $1.5 million for fire to be compliant, or we embark on a consolidated dispatch model and save $1.5 million. Is that correct?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Dufour, I think if there'll be savings if we were to move it, but we're going to have some expenditures regardless in order to make our system compliant. Again, whether that system is with us or at the police service. I think the ability, though, that it'd be cheaper to do it or less expensive to combine it, though, for sure.
Okay. Are we proceeding on the basis that any expenditures that fire does make for a new system would be ones that are necessary for the consolidated system?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Dufour, we're looking into every option we can to not have that much of an expenditure. The capital request that we put forward was a necessity because as we were operating our dispatch system, we weren't going to be compliant. So we had to get funding so that we could ensure our compliance. As time's evolving here and the NG 911 is kind of evolving, we are learning things month to month. We might have an opportunity to not have to have that large expenditure. That's new information that we've just received in the last week.
Okay, because to this point, how much have we expended on this system so far?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council Dufour, we only have the approval right now, out of the $1.5 million, we haven't spent any of that money.
Okay.
We have a contract with a third-party company, Netigen, that was approved maybe last year. I believe that was a 5-year contract for about $600,000 or $700,000, about $200,000 a year. But that's kind of regardless of what we're talking about tonight. So the complete expenditure of the 1.5, nothing's been spent.
Okay, and so will there be a report coming back to council in the near term outlining what the next steps are going to be, or is that something that would require specific direction from council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council Dufour, I would suspect we'll come back with a report when we have our final costing of what it's going to take to get us to be compliant. Also with, again, on the earlier touch point, depending on what happens at collective bargaining, that would obviously be the larger portion of our decision we have to make.
Great. So with the adoption of these recommendations as information tonight, does that change any of your next steps for the short term?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council Dufour, no.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Spina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, thank you. I just want to be cognizant and aware the chief made a comment that currently there is collective bargaining happening. So any questions I have, I will hold in respect to that collective bargaining.
Thank you. Councillor Spina, were there other questions not related to bargaining? And Councillor Bruni?
Just a general comment. It is definitely a good starting point for city staff and the police services. The staff at police services and the senior management are excited to work with our city staff on the summary of the core recommendations. And the board will be monitoring very closely on a quarterly basis on the progress from this report. So we're quite pleased with this report.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Madam Clerk, has the resolution been read?
It is included on consent, just to
Okay.
accepting as information.
Good. Thank you. Thank you to the KPMG team for attending this evening.
Thank you very much.
That will bring us to consent. I've got a motion by Councillor Scott and Bezoal and resolved that all the items listed under date April 8, 2024, agenda item 7, consent agenda, save and accept agenda item 7.3 and 7.19 be approved as recommended.
Council questions on the consent agenda? Councillor Bezoal.
Thank you. I just have two. Start with 7.1, the AMO advocacy report. And from that, I would just like, probably to Councillor Dufour, just a little more information on the opioid class action lawsuit that AMO is submitting affidavit on behalf of Ontario's municipalities. If you could just expand on that, that would be very thankful.
Sure. So my understanding, and I'm sure Karen can correct me if I'm wrong, but that before the class action can proceed, it needs to be approved as such. And so the hearings right now are on the basis of whether or not there has been basically group harm occurred. And so that's why AMO is responding on behalf of municipalities to give kind of like a general overview of the harms and the associated costs that municipalities have incurred. If the lawsuit is allowed to proceed as a class action, at that point, the city of Sault Ste. Marie, like any other municipality in Ontario, would have to then become a party to the class action and would then be responsible for producing their own accounting of the expenses that they're seeking reimbursal for as part of the suit. And I think that at that point as well, AMO should have just some other tools available to help us know where to look in our own municipal operations to find those costs and more easily bring them forward should we, as I believe this council would want to, be a part of the class action.
Okay, because my question was, is it just municipality or could it be organizations that are part of our levy and local boards such as police services or district social services admin, if those costs can be included within the municipality? But it sounds like you're not aware if that's included or not.
It looks like AMO's doing inclusive of those costs because they are coming from property taxes.
Yes.
So any of the levy boards where they are receiving a majority of their funding from property taxes from municipalities, those are being included in the kind of net of AMO research at this point. So they would be providing us guidance with how we could tabulate those.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else on 7.1.
Anyone else on 7.1? Thank you, Councillor Dufour, for the report. Councillor Bezuilen, other items on consent?
My next is 7.4, Community Development Fund for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. As an English major and as someone who has a family of readers, I think this is wonderful. My only question is in terms of coordination, because with any new initiative, you need someone to own it and take care of it. So I don't know who can answer this, but from what I gather from the report and the funding, will the library be the entity coordinating the program?
Mr. Lamming, Mr. Anderson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bezuilen, you raised a good question here. We'd probably have to take this away to get it back to coordinate with Mr. Ver, get some further instance, but we'll be heavily involved from Community Development Enterprise Services area to coordinate with the library.
So at this point, we don't have someone that's coordinating the program. I think it's wonderful, like Kiwanis has come in, social services, the library, but there still needs to be the Rotary. There still needs to be someone who's actually going to take care of it and coordinate it and be the bank and be the delivery spot and all that. And that has not, the rollout hasn't been determined yet, is what you're telling me. Okay. Okay. I will approve this funding, but I think in further, new initiatives always take more time and effort and coordination than sometimes we think. So I think this might be a good spot to look at the Friends of the Library, perhaps as a volunteer who could volunteer coordinate Mr. Lamming. I think that would be a good spot to start. But in future, I think if you're going to bring a new initiative, there needs to be a plan on how that initiative is actually going to roll and be managed. But I do support the application.
Anyone else on 7.4? Councillor Caputo and then Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I more wanted to respond to what Councillor Bezuilen is saying. It is my understanding and working pretty closely with Mr. Ver that the city is taking the lead. It is the city. The checks have been made out to the city and the city is managing all of those things. I think just Mr. Ver coming from the lead position in community development and now CAO, and unfortunately today he couldn't be here to answer that, but it is my understanding it is taken care of, and I see Mr. Lamming nodding. So did you want to add something? Okay. But yeah, we are, we got this question also from Kiwanis and Rotary, and the answer that was given was that the city is going to be the service manager.
Thank you for that information, Councillor Caputo. Did you have anything to comment on this?
Just that it's awesome.
Thank you. Councillor Bruni on 7.4.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know who to direct this question.
Go ahead and ask it and we'll get it direct.
The first year, the cost will be $16,000, but the total cost will be $230,000. So my question is, where will the rest of the funding come from? If we pass it tonight, where are we going to come up with the $214,000?
Is there information available on that? No. Councillor Caputo, as I assume you've been part of these meetings.
Yeah, I've been part of the meeting. So essentially what we're going to do is cap the amount of kids that can enroll to match whatever funding we have. And we're hoping as the program rolls out, more folks are going to want to donate to it and watch it grow. But we certainly would love to get to that stage where we're at $200,000 of worth of children participating. But so for right now, we'll be capping it where it is and watching it grow, hopefully.
I don't, just a question to Councillor Caputo. I don't understand the capping. What are we capping? The students or children?
Yes, so each child, I believe, is $46 per year is the cost. So we can say, I think this year we're at 21,000 dollars. So we can say, that equals X number of children. Once we've reached X number of children that are enrolled, we can't enroll anymore and go from there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Any other councillors questions on 7.4? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Vesuel, other items on consent?
My computer just died. Sorry, 7.19. So my question is concerning the Jehovah's Witness.
Councillor Vesuel, we accepted that from consent because of a conflict. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
get to that after.
Okay, then I'll do 7.30. Just more of a comment. We have Diane Morel here in at council with the annual accessibility fund report. And just want to make note that she's here. And I think an important stat that a lot of people aren't aware of, sorry, my computer just, is that people with disabilities are one of the largest population categories in Ontario. Approximately 2.9 million Ontarians age 15 plus currently have one or more disabilities. By 2014, this number is anticipated to increase by another 1 million. And the majority of these functional disabilities are not visible. So I want to thank Diane for doing all the heavy lifting on the accessibility status report for our year end 2023. And I also want to thank Peter. Planning is always part of our accessibility committee meetings, and we work in tandem. And I think it's really important that we continue to have a more accessible community for all that can thrive. So I don't know if Diane wanted to highlight on anything, but I wanted to make sure people knew that she was here and that the report is hers.
Thank you, Councillor Vesuel. Other councillors with questions on 7.30? That was an excellent summary, Ms. Morel, as well as the subsequent requests that are on the agenda for various accessible equipment. That's great to see that being rolled out. So thank you for those reports. Councillor Vesuel, and other items on consent?
That is it.
That is all. Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agenda 7.24, People's Road area.
Yes.
Flooding. I guess my questions will be directed to Carl. The list of summarizing the recommended improvements. We'll start off with the number 1, Elliott Field ditching improvements to mitigate erosion impacts to properties along Elliott Road. Where exactly the ditching will be? Will it be further up or along the property line of the houses on Elliott?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, the ditching that's referred to in those recommendations is on the southeast corner of the fields, and it in the area where Elliott Road curves and becomes Rossmore. That's those properties. The ditch will run along the rear of their property lines.
Okay, thank you. The second question is the Elliott Field stormwater management ponds So where would these ponds be located? Because right now, do we have any ponds right now in that area?
Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruni, yes, it's kind of hard to articulate without a graphic, but there is an existing pond which is sort of between the baseball diamonds. That's the swampy marshy area there. That will be enhanced slightly with some changes in inlets from, say, Hillside Drive in the area, like gathering water to that location as well. There is a city-owned parcel of land on Peoples Road right at the intersection of Pino. So just north of the tracks, it's a triangular piece of property. There's a pond that we're proposing to construct there. That would be a new pond. And there's a low-lying area just east of the baseball diamond pickleball courts, I believe now, which would be a small existing low-lying area that would be enhanced a bit to gather up some more water.
Okay, thank you. Number 4, I don't understand elephant trunk. Maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit. Peoples Road, elephant trunk, offline storage pipe adjacent to Elliott Road.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Bruni, that was known as the elephant trunk years ago, predating myself. I don't understand why they called it that either. But it's essentially it's a disconnected offline large diameter storage pipe. So when flow in this Peoples Road sewer would rise up to a certain elevation, would spill into that basically storage. Better to flood a storage pipe or tank than people's basements kind of thing. So we would be reintroducing that.
Okay, thank you. On number 3, Peoples Road sanitary sewer upgrade to increase sewer capacity on Peoples Road. Where will the start and the finish Peoples?
Mr. Mayor to Councilor Bruni, the recommendation is to upsize the Peoples Road sanitary sewer from Churchill to 3rd line.
Churchill Street to 3rd line. Okay, thank you. On number 8, upgrading Johnson Avenue sanitary sewer from Diane Street to Farewell Terrace. I have a bit of concern because all of Johnson, a lot of homeowners did get flooded. Now, if you're just going to be doing it from Diane to Farewell Terrace, would that eliminate some of the flooding down in the east side of East End, Johnson?
Mr. Mayor to Councilor Bruni, so Diane to Farewell is the west end of
the west,
right? So the east end, upsizing that small section on the west end would lower the hydraulic grade line and eliminate flooding occurrences from Peoples Road to Diane. Yes.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. This area here has been flooded in 2013, 2018, and 2021. The Sultan started this in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. It's taken a few years. There was a lot of public consultation. We had it at Superior Heights, which was an excellent turnout. So this is very encouraging for the homeowners in that area there. And hopefully this will eliminate some of the flooding that has occurred. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Brumil, it says in your report, some of these recommendations will be put forward in future capital programs. Are there some of these recommendations that staff is not recommending? Or is it just that there's too many there to commit to putting in this iteration of the 5-year program?
Mr. Mayor to Councillor Dufour, no, we're recommending that we'll eventually get to all of them. There are some obvious low-hanging fruit that there's some maintenance opportunities that Public Works could tackle right away, which is being the ditch that we just spoke about. Yeah, we'll prioritize them and start with the ones that create the greatest benefit first. We do have in the capital transportation plan starting in 2025, we have earmarked some funds for Peoples Road recommendations. Council will be getting an update on that 5-year capital plan in the next couple meetings as well. So we can now like put actual projects to it, not just earmarked amounts.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Gardy?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Dufour sort of asked the question I was going to, so no need for that. But I think it's an opportunity for us to highlight for the community, you know, the cost of these types of projects and the challenges we're faced by. I, like Councillor Bruni, am hopeful that these will be able to be prioritized for that area of the community because they have suffered repetitively from flooding. That being said, you know, with HST, we're probably talking close to 20 million bucks, and that's for just one kind of small area in our community for a project like this. So, you know, we do what we can when we can, but I think it's important to highlight the cost of these types of projects for the community. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gardy. Any other councillors? Councillor Caputo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ramil, is there an opportunity when we're doing this to look at traffic calming measures that could happen? Especially, I mean, I grew up in this area, so Elliott is like a very wide and straight road that, you know, experiences a lot of speed. If we're going to be digging, I just wonder to what degree, if there is any appetite or if there's been any thought about putting in traffic calming in these areas while that's happening.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, I don't think there was any recommendations that actually had like a reconstruction of Elliott Road per se. But certainly if there's a project that's going to spill over and require a small section to be reconstructed, Johnson Avenue is a good opportunity to look at something like that. The other one is People's Road, but we don't tend to use like active traffic calming measures like speed humps on arterial roads. So, but yeah, definitely we're always, when we're reconstructing a road due to restoring it for underground infrastructure, is to look, and then's the time to look at active transportation or traffic calming kind of measures for sure.
Okay, great. I just wanted to flag that because as the snow has melted, you know, we start getting the calls about speed and all that stuff. So I'm just putting the bug in your ear, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you, through you, Mayor, to Carl. Not to go off topic so much, but just to add on to Councillor Caputo's point. Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you just said that as we go into the future, if there's any construction that's going to be done to a street, you and your team are always looking at calming methods. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, yeah, for sure. All these roads that are these projects, they have large files and a history of complaints, and we get all those too. So then's the time to have a whole look at, like a wholesome look at solving as many problems, I guess, as we can when the road is needing full reconstruction.
Right. And as council, I know that we talked about this about 2 months ago. And so I'm glad that's still on your radar. Off topic slightly, but I think it's just important to educate again the community on this. Thank you.
You, other councillors with questions on 724? Councillor Spina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a really important report. There's a lot of good information there, and I may have missed it earlier, Mr. Ramil. Some of those things, are you planning on doing this year? The low-hanging fruit, so to speak?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Spina. So in the actual resolution, we did get permission for Public Works to do in kind that ditching, that's new ditching. My understanding is they required direction from council to be able to do that. So that's something that if operations staff could schedule in this year, could happen this year. Other than that, we'll probably be in, you'll see in the next, probably in the first meeting in June, a update to the capital transportation plan, which will outline next year's projects. And then we'd be getting started on the 2025 work. So we'll probably look for full reconstruction stuff. It would be 2025. We'd be getting started, but some operational maintenance stuff could happen this year, I suppose.
I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, again, Mr. Ramil, more directly, the things I was thinking were the ditching, of course, and the ponds. Are those things that can happen relatively quickly, which may potentially relieve a lot of the stress on the folks in these areas? I think this is fantastic, the work that you've put into this. I don't want to, by any means, feel like I'm rushing this project at all, because it is important. But certainly, if they've waited as long as Councillor Bruni's indicated, they need some relief.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, I would say it would be fair to say that the ditching, yes, probably the ponds might be capital projects.
Thank you. So
Anyone else on 724? I had one, Mr. Rumiel, on the interim capital plan that you had provided us a year or so ago that runs to 2028. It had People's Road recommendations in 2025, 2027, and 2028. Did your earmarking of projects in those 3 years total 17 plus million, or were you underestimating what it might cost?
No, certainly not, Mr. Mayor. We were just trying to set aside some money to get a good start on these, realizing this will be an ongoing program that we'll have to be picking away at over the years.
Right. So it's not a 3-year implementation over 4 years. It's probably a much longer time frame than that.
That would be correct.
Thank you. Councillor Bruni, we're still on you for other items on consent.
Agenda 7.2.1 Sackville Road.
7.2.21. Yeah. 21.
I guess my concern with this is that I'm worried that we're going to be working on Sackville Road and the People's Road construction at the same time. And for traffic wise, it could be an issue. Funding is an issue, will be an issue. Two big projects like this. How will you handle it, Carl, your department?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. So for funding, I mean, we only have what we project to be available for the capital transportation program. And in 2025, I believe the only thing recommended was going to be putting in the culvert through the ravine for Sackville.
2025?
Yeah, that's correct. So that would, we'd be obviously focusing most of our efforts dollar wise on People's Road. Traffic wise, there'd be big traffic. If we were reconstructing essentially People's Road, that's a big detour that have to be in place. But working on Sackville at the same time, most of that's new road. So, back to the funding, I guess we are actively pursuing one promising funding opportunity right now, which is due in April which would be for People's Road.
So phase 1 will be 2025. When will phase 2 occur? Would that be the year after or a couple of years after?
For Sackville, it was the year after.
The year
But again, we will be bringing another revised updated plan.
Yes.
So every year we'll do a rolling 5-year plan. There will be shifts in that depending on things like funding opportunities that present themselves or other as things get prioritized higher based on accelerated needs, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Councillor Dufour, and then Councillor Spina.
Yeah, just following up on Councillor Bruni's question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Carl, and answer this now if you can, later if you can. Is there internal staff debate about the relative merits of, now that the People's Road EA is back, moving up some of those projects, using some of the funding or the allocations that were there for Sackville?
To be Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, I guess I would say we'll be putting out the next 5-year capital plan and we can look at prioritizing it differently. I suppose, yeah, there are some high priorities with People's Road, given that there's basement floodings involved. But like I mentioned, there's potentially we're chasing after funding opportunity there too. So, but it's kind of early to announce anything on that.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate your answer and I look forward to further discussions in June.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Spina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, recognizing that this report is not in front of us for approval of the project tonight. I want to make sure that we're clear on that. It's just receiving the report as information. I just want to echo some of the comments from my colleagues here. When we're looking at prioritizing projects, I think People's Road by far leaps and bounds goes over the Sackville Road project and a much, much higher priority. Rather than having staff be directed at two of these major projects simultaneously, I'd much rather see staff's full attention to resolving the issues at People's Road. So I recognize that this will come back to us. However, if in the meantime staff needs to focus attention, I would suggest or hope that they would focus their attention on People's Road and maybe put this aside for now to improve the quality of lives for people in those areas rather than building a new road at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Spina. Anyone else on 721? Councillor Bruni, other items on consent?
Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. The item is 7.6, 2024 property tax capping options. I'm looking to see if Lisa's here. If not, Shelley Shell.
Yes, Ms. Petrarco. Welcome to council.
Do you, Mr. Mayor? Hi, Lisa. First of all, I thought it was a well-written report. It was very clear, and I know it's sometimes a very confusing, difficult topic. So I also think it's an important report. And so that's why I want to highlight it tonight. Because in case people at home are thinking that it's going to directly impact the residential, I want to use this opportunity to allow you to educate the community what this report is all about. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I'd have read it correctly, it's more focusing on non-residential. And I believe it's also focusing more on our industry groups. And with regards to the capping, I believe it's not really focused on capping for residential individual homes, but I just want you to take this opportunity to educate our community because it's such an important report.
Through you, Mayor, Councilor Hollingsworth. Capping is for non-residential properties. It's, I'm going to try to explain this. It was relief that was it was a tool put in place years ago to assist property owners, multi-residential, commercial, and industrial from large assessment jumps. So they put a 5% capping on those properties, and the people that the increasers, the people that were capped were paid within the tax class by the people that potentially could have seen savings. So I call it the increasers and the decreasers. So the decreasers basically paid for the increasers. So it's never been a residential tool. A couple of years ago, we were able to exit capping for multi-residential. This year, we're in year 3 of exiting capping. It's a 4-year process. And after, if council approves, we'll be entering first year of exiting capping in the industrial tax class as well. So potentially in 4 years, we'll be out of capping for all non-residential property class taxes. I said it right, yes.
Perfect. Thank you for your explanation. Again, it's such an important piece when it comes to our tax. So I just want to say thank you for, again, a well-written report and for taking my question and for emphasizing that it's not residential, it's non-residential, it's industry and so forth. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Anyone else with questions on 7.6? Councillor Hollingsworth, other items on consent?
No, that's all.
Other Councillor Caputo, items on consent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, item 7.26, the Sault Ste. Marie Festival of Beer License of Occupation. I see Steve Alexander's here, so if I do have a couple of questions. Most will be directed to Karen or Melanie's here. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Borowitz-Sebenik. I just wonder, how can we approve this application if it is not complete?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, we've drafted the license of occupation in a manner that provides Mr. Alexander with an opportunity to complete some further permits that he's acquiring right now. He's advised us that he's applying for this will be the first time for the community that there will be an entire section of street licensed, along with a flow through of patios through various businesses that have extended patios. So this will be the first opportunity for this. He's applying for a license with the AGCO to permit this, but the time period has not yet, he has not yet received his permit. Actually, he's going through the steps right now of the application itself. And because of that, we've given deadlines within the license agreement. So given the council meetings before the event, there is no further meeting. We didn't want to, there's actually one further meeting actually. However, it's coupled with the US meeting through our US counterparts. So in order to have this considered by council, we provided deadlines within the license agreement. So if he is unsuccessful in obtaining the actual permit from AGCO, the license itself would be terminated. The rest, so it does provide for that eventuality if that is the result. However, if he is successful, the event can then proceed.
Okay, thank you. So, Steve, hi, thanks for coming. Is the application in with the AGCO?
Application is AGCO website and portal has been down since last week, so it has gone through. They're still looking for like the payment, but that part of their is now. They were hoping that would be up this week. Some is to back up and running. Then the application goes through. Everything else has been submitted.
So the other two items, I think it was security and pull it up here. Are those squared away as well?
So we've been in conversation with both Derek and Lisa at the police. We will have 2 constables and a sergeant from 12 o'clock till 7 o'clock on the day of, and 2 more constables starting at 3 o'clock till 7 o'clock that day. We've been talking with Michael Steinberg over at Norpro, so we'll have an additional 9 Norpro officers on site for that day. And each patio, each licensee that has a patio has also signed the contract so that they'll have their own security, maintain their patio and capacities.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Tanasso, the application for building permit for 10 structures, that's in and that's going to be complete?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo. Unfortunately, I'm not sure whether the permit is in. Maybe the organizer might have a better idea of that.
I believe Ms. Zupa has some ability to answer that question.
Sorry, I don't mean to interject. I did receive an email late today, right before the start of the meeting from the building division, and working with Steve Alexander as well to ensure that the capacity is okay and that all the building, won't be a requirement for certain building permits. So that just came in late right before the meeting. So that has been addressed.
So essentially what I'm hearing is if everything is, we're kind of giving our thumbs up approval contingent upon everything coming back approved.
To you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Caputo, yes, that's correct. So all AGCO permits would be necessary, APH permits, Algoma Public Health would be necessary. Anything else from building that might be necessary as well, anything from planning that might be necessary, all that would need to be in place, and proof of same provided under the deadlines under the agreement.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions. Just maybe some congratulations to say, I was part of the Festival of Beer in its first, I think it was its first one ever. And to see it grow to this capacity is something really great for the community. I hope that whoever can attend attends, and I hope you get all of your documents in order and that this event is able to go through. But it's really something to see how it's grown. So thank you. Good luck.
Other councillors on this item? Yeah, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Through you, Mayor, to Steve, I just want to echo Councillor Caputo's comments. I know, I shouldn't say it, but I feel strongly that you're going to receive all your approvals, and I wish you great success. You are a hard worker for this community. You have done a lot for this community, not just with this event, but for other events. So I just want to recognize your work behind the scenes. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Other councillors with questions or comments on this item? I had one for either the Director of Planning or for legal. There was a fairly lengthy list of requirements in the report, some of which were municipal related, most of which were other entities like the province, the AGCO, or Algonquin Public Health. Are the municipally related ones if we can call it the bare minimum that we require in order to allow an event like this? Like, it seems like we want to be promoting events like this and not putting up any barrier beyond what kind of AGCO or the province requires of us. Are we at the lowest threshold we can be at?
To you, Mr. Mayor, on this question, yes, we certainly work together with the applicant. We ensure that anything that's necessary to be done, we greatly assist them. So we do want to see the events proceed, and we don't require anything further in addition to what would be necessary for something like this.
Thank you. Councillor Caputo, other items on consent?
Yes, 7.15, the Millworks lease expiration. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Van Staveren. I just wanted to touch on, I had a couple of constituents contact me about a potential RFP process and why that wasn't followed, or why that wasn't the case that was necessary to secure a lease for the millwork. So can you just go over that for me?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo. Yes, under the purchasing bylaw, an RFP is typically used to acquire goods, services, or construction. Purchasing has also confirmed that RFPs are not completed for leased property or space, so not required. Both purchasing and legal agree that Schedule A of the purchasing bylaw, which is Section 3.4, real property purchases, would cover property lease requirements, and that a lease would fall under this exemption. This would require consideration of location, space, and matching features. So under that's how we proceeded with that process.
Okay, thank you so much.
Anyone else on 7.15? Councillor Caputo, other items on consent? Other councillors with items on consent? I had one. Just let me find it. New Development Fund application 718. This is Mr. Van Staveren and or Mr. Lamming. For the port development, there's not too many questions here. I think it's very self-explanatory, but I'm eager to see this proceed, and would appreciate if regular updates could be brought to council to see how progress is being made on this project, because I think it's been talked about since about the 70s, and would be great to see it come to fruition. I think the report itself notes that we've gotten beyond the point of examining and studying it any further. Now we have to get into the implementation phase. So eager to see that implementation phase happen and get started as quickly as possible. Sir Hollingsworth?
If you're done, through you, Mayor, just a comment. I echo what you were saying. Number of us have been on council for a few terms, and this has been on our desks over and over again. So this is very positive. And when you look at our other communities on the Great Lakes, such as Thunder Bay, and even our American partners like Duluth, they have prosperous ports, and I just can't wait to see this move forward and hopefully quickly. And I just want to clarify, I could be wrong, but this is not for cruise ships. It's more for, again, importing our raw materials as one example, or exporting products that are made here or elsewhere in Northern Ontario that can be transported to the community of Sault Ste. Marie and then loaded onto ships that will travel through the Great Lakes and potentially internationally. Correct? Correct.
Mr. Van Saveren, can you confirm?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth,
So again, this is going to be such a positive impact economically for us. So again, I agree with you, Mayor. I hope that we can have many updates to keep the ball rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Dufour.
Yes, I share all of your comments, and I had one final item, consent.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Sorry. Yep. So just item 7.5, more just a quick comment. If we look over into the tax rate scenario sheet, we see that our 2023 municipal revenue change from assessment growth was over 1% this year. I mean, I don't know if Shelley knows right off the top of her head when we last had 1% assessment growth, but I believe it's been quite a few years. So Shelley, I'm sorry, I didn't warn you. I think it was 2012, maybe.
It's been a long time. You
Yeah.
are correct.
So
Very long time.
We're 10 to 15 years since we cleared that 1% threshold. I think it's really good news for the community. It really is. It means that we are starting to grow. We are starting to see hopefully some of the results of the demographic changes that a lot of our previous council discussed and was made aware of, but also some of the results of the investments that the city has made in our community. You know, obviously it's an attractive place to be, to build, and we're starting to see some of those multi-year benefits of that. And this year, you know, our tax increase hits 1% less. So I think everyone in this room has been a part of the process and seen how much work it is to try to get a percentage point taken off of the levy. And here this year, we've seen a lot of the longer term strategies that prior councils have adopted doing that work for us. So kudos to everyone, and let's keep it up.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Spina on this item? No? I was just going to remark on this item. I'm glad you brought it up, Councillor Dufour. You know, we've spent so much time focusing on what the percentage increase is going to be at budget time. And I think this landed at 4.84. And then we factor in growth and it comes down. So what we approved at budget time, 4.84, is actually quite, you know, it's 0.5 or 6 lower than that ultimately because of the growth in the tax rate or tax base. Sorry. So good news story all around for sure. Seeing no other items on consent, we can have a vote on the consent motion. Is it? I did at the beginning. It's okay. It's been a while. All in favor? That carries. Brings us to
7.
Okay, so before we begin dealing with the formal process of determining next steps under the Integrity Commissioner's report, I wanted to talk about how we got here because I think it's important that we recognize what led to this Integrity Commissioner's investigation. I want to be abundantly clear to the community. The Integrity Commissioner investigation is not because Councillor Kinnick was unhappy with a staff report or opposed a staff recommendation or questioned staff on their reasoning. This process was not started because he was looking to limit spending on consultants. There is nothing inappropriate about councillors questioning and challenging staff on their reports and recommendations. That's what we're elected to do. And that's what we do every meeting. We've done it for the last hour and a half tonight. I've seen every councillor here over my 10 years in office do just that. And it has largely been done in a productive manner. Certainly, I've not been shy about questioning staff on projects like the plaza and many other proposed initiatives. I think it's important to recognize, however, that there is a productive way to get things done, and there are ramifications for taking an unproductive and unprofessional approach. We got to where we are tonight because the Integrity Commissioner, at Councillor Kinnick's request, was asked to determine if his conduct breached the Code of Conduct, when he said staff were working against council and Suites. Her independent investigation determined that he did breach the Code of Conduct. Specifically, the requirement not to use, and I'm quoting here from the Code of Conduct, indecent, abusive, or insulting words or expressions. In using such language, then choosing to request that the Integrity Commissioner investigate that choice of words, we are achieving the exact opposite of what he was trying to achieve. We're spending money on an Integrity Commissioner report, which is a consultant, instead of debating the merits of tax savings. We are now using council time debating a councillor's conduct instead of debating ways to improve the city and save tax dollars. This is our first Code of Conduct breach since we were mandated by the province to implement one in 2018. Meanwhile, other municipalities have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on Integrity Commissioner investigations since then. I certainly don't want us to get to that point. I would prefer if we spent our time debating the issues before us in a productive way. So let's use this as a reminder of why we should focus on issues so we don't get sidetracked with the type of distractions that are before us tonight. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the city clerk and city solicitor who will outline the process that we follow from here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council's options are to pass a motion to accept the report of the Integrity Commissioner and accept the recommendation contained therein, or accept the report of the Integrity Commissioner as information only, or accept the report of the Integrity Commissioner and alter the sanction. In the event that the councillor would refuse to comply, council could refer the matter back to the Integrity Commissioner for consideration, or council could decide a different sanction. And the city solicitor can speak to penalties.
To you, Mayor, under the Municipal Act, once a Integrity Commissioner has found that a member has contravened the Code of Conduct, they have two options available to them. One is to reprimand, and the second one is to suspend the remuneration paid to the member for a period of time up to 90 days. Doesn't have to be 90 days, but it's up to 90 days. Under our Code of Conduct, it also sets out the actions that council may take, and they're pretty much the same. They're an apology, a reprimand, a suspension, and then there's four others that don't really fit the fact situation here.
Thank you, Madam City Solicitor. So the recommendation from the Integrity Commissioner is that an apology be issued. We are not here to debate whether or not the conduct was a breach of the conduct, the Code of Conduct. That has been determined to be the case. We are here to determine if Councillor Kinnick's going to go the route recommended by the Integrity Commissioner, and if not, what the consequence will be. Councillor Kinnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm able to make remarks, questions. What am I?
Yeah, remarks. So yes, remarks, or you can question the procedure of the next steps.
So I just want to go over a little bit of a timeline, kind of like what you did. So this is all starting back to last council meeting, which is already 3 weeks ago. We had our first meeting, you, Mayor Shoemaker and CAO Bear, on March 22nd, 2024. At that time, brought to my attention that a senior staff member would be reporting me to the Integrity Commissioner for an investigation if I did not give a public apology at today's meeting. And at that meeting, you both requested that I would give an apology today. I was not, initially I was not disagreeable to the fact. Over that weekend, I sat down and tried to write an apology that I thought I could read at council, but over that, after it was finished, I couldn't bring myself to read it out loud, even at home. After that, I went to some trusted colleagues, friends, family, for advice that I know in Sault Ste. Marie. I reached out, I got what I thought was very good advice. And then it was going to the next step. So, and then from there, I laid out in an email my reasoning of the next step, which is on the, which has been added to the agenda today. If anybody's interested, I would recommend you read it. I don't want to go through it all because we're going to be here forever. Basically, I came to the conclusion was I would be inclined to offer a private apology. That is not allowed because the complaint process is anonymous. Like even when the complaint's filed, we don't get to learn who complained. So in that way, then I offered just a general apology that our meeting addressed the issues in council, and then I would what I used was I would be more courteous and polished going forward. That was rejected for a private apology for the senior staff management, and then it was that the hanging timeline of going to council meeting, of apologizing, or going to, or I would be reported to the integrity commissioner. At that time, I decided to go to the commissioner myself for a request of advice. So that was, I think it's dated March 30th, which is over the week, which was a Saturday. So it was submitted April 1st. From there, from April 1st to April 4th, it was reviewed. All this request for advice is available. You can look up everything I wrote up to my paragraph, what I was asking for. And the commissioner, integrity commissioner, contacted me about it April 4th in the afternoon, which was the Thursday. I had a conversation with her about probably 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and she emailed me at 2:20 that it would be going on the agenda, and then it was added by 4:30 that night. And then all the rest of it went. So this has been going on for a while. Most people think it just started on Friday. This has been going on the scenes back and forth for a long time. Like overall, we're not fighting over, like we're not disagreeing. Personally, I don't have anything against you or Mr. Ver. I want to say that out here today. It's just the process, and where I think I'm not out of line and you think I'm out of line is debatable. It's a gray zone. We've agreed to that in our meeting, the three of us. So we went to the integrity commissioner. From integrity commissioner, everything else happened. The coverage, we were on April 5th, which was the Friday that the article came out. I had an overwhelming amount of support from students. I want to say thank you. I was receiving emails, text messages, and phone calls. My first one that on Friday was at 7:30 in the morning, and my last one was at 9 at night. And people were overwhelmingly supportive either way. I just wanted to say thank you because that could have been all negative. That could have been a really terrible day for me. So it was nice to see that I had some support in what I'm in my decisions. So just going forward, I'd like to ask some questions now. So to generally state, I'm not going to be offering my apology today right now. And then I will expand on the final reason why I didn't want to offer my apology. It's part of what I want to do here today. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, out of all your time serving on council, in last meeting, how would you rate my comments on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being ideal, 10 being totally unacceptable.
Councillor Kinnick, it's the integrity commissioner who determined that they were breach of the code of conduct. What we think of them personally and individually is not relevant.
I would counter that because this is going to be my judge and jury after that.
We are determining, based on your refusal to provide an apology, what the consequence of that decision is. We are not determining whether or not the comments were a breach of the code of conduct, because it's the integrity commissioner who found that they were a breach of the code of conduct.
Okay. So then I have one more piece of information that I was given, that was on Sunday by a constituent. It's interesting. So I'm not allowed, I don't want to accuse anything, but I don't want I have information, but I wanted to express it through questions for it to come out. I don't want to do anything accusative. So how can I do that?
If they are relevant to.
I think it's relevant to the report, yes, and the Integrity Commission.
Okay. Ask them and we can direct them as we.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Tazinski, what is your relationship with Ms. Blunt?
Antoinette Blunt is a neighbor of mine on Ironside Drive.
Okay. So would you consider yourself friends?
That's neither relevant nor applicable to the conduct. No,
Fortunately, it is.
if you've got a
She's a
question,
senior staff member. And if they have a relationship with their friends, in my report that or request for advice, it said that there was a senior staff member was.
Councilor Gardy, please. Councilor Kinnick, the complaint process, first off, is anonymous. So it is whoever it was that spoke to Mr. Ver, I don't know. It would never become public and you're not going to extract it from questioning tonight.
Okay.
So
then I'll just
move on from that.
make the statement here. So Ms. Blunt commented on Ms. Tazinski's
No,
Facebook page.
you're not going to do that, Councilor Kinnick. I'll
Your
turn your
friend.
mic, turn his mic off. That's complete. It's not, Councilor Kinnick. It's not. You're going to get yourself, Councilor Kinnick, into, no, your mic is off. I control the microphones in the room. You're going to get yourself in much more serious trouble, okay? This is something that you said that was off the cuff, a little bit over the line. It probably didn't go that far in terms of the seriousness, but what you are going down the path of is much more serious. And there will be absolutely no entertaining of it. And frankly, you need to learn your role better because this is not your role. So we are here to discuss what the consequence will be for the breach that the Integrity Commissioner found from your comments at the last meeting. And that is what we are deciding. If you have questions about that process, we will entertain them. But if you're going to get into a cross-examination to try and figure out how that all came about, it's not happening. Yes, go ahead, turn his mic on.
I'd just like to bring to the attention of council in the Integrity Commission report, my name is spelled incorrect. Thank you.
Council, an apology was not offered. You heard what the city solicitor stated, which is that we've got a couple of options. Madam City Solicitor, could you go through what those are before we deliberate them?
I apologize. Through the penalties section again.
What the options are before us for consequences, yes.
The options where the Integrity Commissioner has found that a member has contravened the code of conduct is either a reprimand, a suspension on the remuneration paid to the member in respect of his or her services to council for up to 90 days, or under the code of conduct. We could also include an apology.
Yes, well, a apology was recommended, not given, so I suspect that we are dealing with either a reprimand or a suspension of pay. For what it's worth, council, I think a reprimand is sufficient for the breach from a few weeks ago. And I'm content to hear from you on whether or not you want a reprimand or a suspension of pay based on the comments from a few weeks ago. Not what we heard tonight, please. And we are not deliberating whether or not it was a breach of the code of conduct because it clearly was, as determined by Ms. Blunt. Just going to start and go around the room. Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I have seen worse, but it is not my mandate to vote on the discipline actions of Councillor Kinnick. I will not vote for or against, but I will vote to bring this back to the Integrity Commissioner and maybe our legal can help us out. I,
Please, no. That's not part of our council process to clap. Thank you.
so I think it's important that if we.
You'll be removed if you're disrupting the debate.
So I think it's important if we bring it back to the integrity commissioner so she can provide the final recommendations, the final discipline. The integrity commissioner recommendation was for Councillor Knick to apologize. He has refused, which he has all the right to. So we send it back to the integrity commissioner and she can finalize what the discipline action would be. I don't think it's council's responsibility. We're supposed to be working together, and now we're going to go after a counselor and discipline. I don't think that's working together. Put the onus back on her and let's move forward on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Councillor Dufour.
Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify for my own benefit, through you to Ms. Fields. Ms. Fields, do the options that you provided us with, are those options that exist in the City of Sault Ste. Marie's Code of Conduct, or do they exist in the Municipal Act and are provided for by provincial law? Is Sault Ste. Marie the only community where council can issue a reprimand or a suspension of pay, or is that baked into those portions of the Municipal Act that concern the Integrity Commissioner?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, they are in both. So they're under the Municipal Act, under section 223.4 sub 5, and also under our Code of Conduct.
Okay, thank you. So to Councillor Bruni's point, Sault Ste. Marie City Councillors aren't taking a power upon themselves that isn't already provided for in the Municipal Act by the province. This is how the Integrity Commissioner system is supposed to work. My point of view is that within the penalties that we have, I see an escalation. People have an opportunity to apologize. If they don't apologize, there's a reprimand. If the reprimand doesn't work and the behavior continues, there's a suspension of pay. I don't see any compelling reason why sending it back to the Integrity Commissioner would interfere in that escalation of consequence. I think that escalation of consequence is there for a reason, because ultimately the Code of Conduct is meant to be corrective, not punitive. We are all trying to get to a point where we are abiding by the same standards of decorum that we expect our peers will abide by. And I think that it's a standard of decorum and a spirit that serves Sault Ste. Marie really well, as evidenced by the fact that this is the first time we've ever had to deal with breach of the Code of Conduct, not just in this term, but in the previous term. And I think that speaks highly of the character of the people that have been here. Because of that, I feel, I'm disappointed that my colleague has chosen not to provide an apology that I think would have been simple to do so. So I'm happy to support a reprimand. I'm not happy to support any suspension of pay at this point. And I don't see any reason why we need to re-involve the Integrity Commissioner to arrive at that same place when that's been provided for and that's part of our responsibility. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Scott, anything to add?
Mr. Mayor, I missed a heck of a meeting. I think I'll keep it short. I feel very similar to you, Councillor Bruni, and what he had laid out. So I'll be following what he's thinking as well and referring it back, and that's everything.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to offer an apology to staff because I think it is deserved. I'm sorry that you're dealing with this and that you've come into a limelight that you don't deserve. Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Keep it to the.
Yep. I've already shared my sentiments with Councillor Knick prior to the meeting. I had no issue with him probing the use of consultant. And I do have a major issue in the manner that, he spoke to city staff. I'm disappointed that he chose not to apologize and end this. I feel like he's alienated staff and now council by trying to make us make a punitive decision, which clearly none of us want to do. I think that it is our job as counselors to do what's best for the city and for the voters. And this issue is eclipsing city business and alienating very qualified city staff. It is, in my opinion, to Councillor Kinnick, you should apologize. And if you can take it back and you at any point want to just do that, please go ahead. But, you know, I think that where you can bring true value is being a counselor, bringing the motions forward. And, you know, we can't get that done if we're attacking city staff and attacking each other. So while I'm not happy with, you know, the way this is rolling right now, I would also like to offer you support in the future if you should need to reach out about understanding reports or maybe thinking about comments before you're making them in a public forum. But for you, I'm happy to support whatever you think is the proper punitive measure here. I'm way less concerned with the punishment, and just I'd really like to say my eyes and ears will be open from this point forward for myself and for everyone around this horn. I hope that we all really take into consideration how we're speaking to staff and each other in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. I just want to note it's a difference in language, but it matters. Councillor Dufour had it right. It's a corrective action or consequence, not a punishment, though it may be perceived as such. Councillor Spina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief in my comments. I want to be clear to everyone in Sault Ste. Marie. You have a city council that works very well together to get the job done, to represent the people of this community. And that includes Councillor Kinnick. We're all here for the right reasons. We're all here to represent the people of Sault Ste. Marie. And I have no doubt in my mind that this council will continue to do that in conjunction with city staff moving forward. Having said that, when we look at situations such as this, it's my opinion that every decision such as this must be made void of emotion. And I do not believe that this entire council is void of emotion at this point. As a result, I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Bruni that we remove ourselves from the situation and send this back to the Integrity Commissioner.
Thank you, Councillor Spina. Councillor Zagordo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too concur with Councillor Bruni on a couple points. The first one is from our city solicitor, we were given 3 options that we can look at. And the way things have rolled out, one of the options, the apology, has already been brought forward through by the Integrity Commissioner. So the Integrity Commissioner has already chosen, in my mind, one of the consequences, and that was the apology. So I feel that it should go back to the Integrity Commissioner, make a decision if that one wasn't followed through. The other thing is that there's not too many occupations and roles that are out there where consequences are given by their own. Teachers don't consequence teachers, police don't consequence police. And I think that should go to, and the reason why we have an Integrity Commissioner and hired one through that process. So those are just my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zagordo. I'll come back to you, Councillor Kinnick, at the end, but Councillor Bezuel.
Thank you. I think it is an honor and a privilege to be an elected official. I think it's really critical that we uphold ourselves to not just the code of conduct, but how we present ourselves on a daily basis in everything that we do. In terms of leadership, one really, I think, critical key of sound and humble leadership is admitting when you're wrong and apologizing when you've made an error in judgment. And unfortunately, my colleague, Councillor Kinnick, is not doing that today. One of the comments that was made was that staff is ignoring the democratic process. We are the democratic process. That's why we're here. And we need to be examples and role models to all of those in our community. I was really excited when Councillor Kinnick was elected because It was great having some young voices around council. And we have to be role models to young people and getting more young people involved in politics. And I really want this to be not just something to learn from, but to grow from. We grow when we go through difficult times, and this is a difficult time. You know, we've been here since 2018, you know, Councillor Dufour, myself, Councillor Hollingsworth, Gardy, Councillor Bruni, Councillor Scott, and we have never had any, we've not always agreed. We don't always agree. And that's good. We come to consensus, we leave, and we all get along, and we all respect each other. And I think that is the one thing that I don't feel right now from Councillor Kinnick is respect. And respect works both ways. It has to be a mutual respect. We all have a different job to fill in this role with the corporation of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, us as council and also staff. And we need to have that collaborative, respectful relationship.
Councillor Venezuela on the
I'm
consequence.
So in terms of what the Integrity Commissioner has recommended, I will hold up that I think we should follow with the reprimand. I believe that, but just bringing it back to Ms. Blunt then would just come back to the same outcome. And I think it's our job as council to be able to make each other accountable, because that's why we're here. Thank you.
Councillor Venezuela and Councillor Gardy.
So to be clear, with the public and the members of this council, when this transpired at last meeting, I was not present. I left early, but I've come to learn of it, quite frankly, solely by the accounts of what was in the media, because that evening I did not watch the rest of the meeting, and I didn't speak to any of my colleagues about what transpired. Nobody brought it to my attention. So the first I learned of this was Friday, and I've been following events. You know, all of this debate and discussion could have been avoided with a simple "I'm sorry," and I think that would have met the direction of the Integrity Commissioner. It's within Councillor Kinnick's right to refuse that, I guess. And we're now looking at, as Councillor Dufour and or you, Mr. Mayor, pointed out to all of us, that these are corrective steps that we're taking. I believe there is a spectrum or a progression of those corrective measures that we can take. So I am in agreement based upon what I've read and heard about the meeting on March 18th, that a reprimand is in order for those comments as a corrective measure. I fear with the insinuation of tonight's meeting, those corrective measures may have to take another step soon if some of us, specifically Councillor Kinnick, doesn't listen to the advice of the Integrity Commissioner. But as of right now, I'm cool with a reprimand based upon the information from that meeting and based upon the direction that you provided this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Gardy, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. May I ask a question for clarification? Through you, Mayor, maybe to Ms. Fields or maybe to you, Mayor. Can you clarify, and I apologize, I have a speech impediment. So reprimand, what, can you give us some examples what that may look like?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, I actually can't. I looked at a number of cases to try and find what that would mean, and I guess it will probably mean whatever council feels is the proper reprimand. I didn't find any like examples or best practices.
If I can be of assistance, given that I have had to play out the scenarios in my head in the event that we get there, it will likely be a verbal comment to Councillor Kinnick from me about behavior and the need to ensure that the behavior is more in line with the code of conduct.
Okay, so for me to understand, for us to understand, if we vote that we want that to pursue that, would that happen tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Just a comment now. Not to repeat everything that my colleagues around this table have said, but when you're in this role, it's nerve-wracking, especially when you're still new in the role. It's like being on stage 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the whole year. You're trying to learn, you're trying to be comfortable in what you say. And we are all very passionate about our community. We're all very passionate when we bring a resolution or a motion to the table. And basically, sometimes words do slip out and we don't mean it. And I'm sure all of us sometimes wish we can pull back words or two. However, we as council go through training as a new elected person, and even as a continuous seasoned person, we go through training, knowing and understanding code of conduct and the municipal act. Our city clerk and others around this room have done a great job to make sure that we're well educated. Like any profession, nursing, engineering, computers or whatnot, we are always being reminded of being professional. Having said that, I do want to emphasize that, again, my speech impairment counselor, Stefan Kunrakat, is relatively new to this role, and it is nerve-wracking. Having said that, I would like to also emphasize that it's important to have a healthy discussion. It's important to have a debate, but using the right words, which our mayor has pointed out has been used over the years by all of our councillors to get our point across professionally, is something that we really have to work at and make sure that we are always using the right words. And unfortunately, my counter councillor may not have used those correct words. So at that time, I do support a reprimand. And thank you.
Madam Clerk, I wasn't keeping track of the supports of reprimand.
Yep. One.
Six. Six. So first we have the support for a motion to reprimand. If is there a motion that we can consider for that?
Yeah. It's resolved that the report of the Integrity Commissioner dated April 5, 2024 be received.
Yes, sorry. Yes, go ahead. Read.
And that councillor cannot be reprimanded.
Councillor Kinnick, sorry. I didn't go back because I said it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to let my fellow councillors know that, well, I think we already know what the decision is going to be. I am also in favor of that because one of my steps in this whole process was to go to do a request for advice because it was going to be cheaper and with the same result than doing an actual investigation. So I will be supporting the reprimand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnick. So the motion has been read. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Hollingsworth, seconder. Councillor Gardy, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries.
Sorry, we.
Oh, sorry, we have to do a.
Well, yes, should. And East is not participating with us.
Those opposed were Councillor Spina, Councillor Scott, and Councillor Bruni. The rest were in favor. Did I get that right?
Spina, Scott, and Bruni opposed.
Councillor Kinnick, we've said a lot already tonight about the conduct in question from a couple of weeks ago. You say so in yourself that you'd be more polished and courteous in your words. That's all we're asking you to do. I think that had you simply said that as part of an apology here tonight, it would have saved us some time of deliberation of this matter. Nobody is keen on having to go through this process and, essentially act as judges on this decision, on this breach of the code of conduct. But that's the position we've been put in. And I encourage you just to continue questioning staff. Absolutely, there is. I don't want to make it seem as though there is any restriction on your ability to do so. But when you do so, come at it from the position that they must be treated with respect. That will allow us to move on to the next matter that was accepted.
The March 2024 Tourism Development Fund applications. I have a motion by Councillors Scott and Dufour. Resolved that the report of the Director of Tourism and Community Development dated April 8, 2024 concerning March 2024 Tourism Development Fund applications be received, and that the recommendation of the Tourism Sault Ste. Marie Board of Directors to allocate $63,250 as detailed below be approved. 2024 and 2025 Regional Convention of Jehovah Witnesses, $24,000. Community Future Conference, $3,000. Community Strong Race Weekend, $5,000. Festival of Beer, $3,000. Ontario Cup Mountain Bike Race, $10,000. Coppa Giovanni Soccer Tournament and Italian Festival, $5,000. Queen Street Cruise, $5,000. Stir the Potential Conference, $3,000. Poutine Feast, $2,750. And Battle Under the Bridge, $2,500.
Council, this was accepted because of Councillor Spina's conflict. Is there any questions on this report? Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Anderson, I believe. Mr. Anderson, just a couple of quick questions. Just have them written down on my trusty little cell phone here. Can you just remind us about the procedure? I know your report outlines basically step by step, but I'm more curious to know, one, is there a maximum limit that we use as a cap that controls how much money we give to a particular event? And also, do we basically have a cap as a maybe a percentage, such as we look at the event's budget, overall budget, and do we have a formula to say that we will only give 10%, 20%, 30% hypothetically? Can you comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. Yes, absolutely, I can comment. So with respect to, there's two streams for the Tourism Development Fund. The first is special events and festivals. The cap for that particular event is $20,000. However, exceptions can be made in special circumstances. The second is product development stream, and the cap for that one is $50,000. However, much like the festivals and event stream, it can be bumped above that in special circumstances. With respect to evaluating the projects, we have a matrix that we run them through. It's quite a detailed matrix. It's quantitative, so there's no interpretation of the results. That's how we determine the amount of funding that's a particular event is eligible for. And generally what we look at is a detailed budget from the event organizer that outlines line item by line item where they're spending their money. And what we typically see is about a 25 to 30% contribution from our fund to match their investment.
Okay, very helpful. So hypothetically, it sounds like you, I'm just going to make up numbers here, but you're talking about 20%, 30%, but it sounds like you never really go to half their budget or more, like you're very conscious about that.
We certainly have, in special circumstances, met at least 50%, sometimes over that. But that's very much dependent on the product or event that comes to us. We're of the view, and the tourism board is of the view, that there are a lot of good private investment or events that need some strong support to get them over the hurdle and get them to a point of sustainability. And we like to ensure that the funds are available there for them.
Okay, final question. So when we look at this list, this current list that's in front of us, obviously you're very comfortable with the whole entire amount that's requested. There are some amounts there that we haven't really seen before, meaning that there are some amounts that are quite large, but you are very comfortable that you have carefully looked at every application and their overall budget basically a microscope, correct?
Absolutely. When we do our assessment, we determine, the number of visitors that are likely to come for those particular events, plus we use a multiplier of $150 per day for a visitor. So we're currently in this report, it's approximately $63,000 that are being invested from the TDF. And when you look at the return on investment, including 2 years of the Jehovah Witness Conference, the return is roughly $2.9 million. So we believe it's money well spent.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the viewers at home understand that you just don't rubber stamp this, but you do a lot of work behind the scenes and dive into this very carefully. Thank you to you and your team. Thank you.
Mr. Bezuallen?
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth did do a great run of questions. But Mr. Anderson, the $24,000 that we give to the Jehovah Witness Conference, doesn't that flow back to us because it covers the venue rental for the GFL?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bezuallen, yes, the funds that are intended to entice the Jehovah Witness Conference to sign with us for 2 years is for the rental of the GFL.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. And I only have one quick question for Mr. Alexander for his $3,000. Are you, for Festival of Beer, are you going to be hiring local performers? Because it's for marketing performances.
You have a couple of bands that are coming in. We do have bus coming in from out of town.
Oh, great.
And then we have a lot of local businesses, a lot of local vendors for this big event this year.
So many years ago, Mr. Alexander and I met doing Busker Fest, Sioux Youth Association. So he knows his buskers. So that's great, Steve. Thank you so very much. That's it.
Anyone else on this report? I had a clarification just on one of the answers you gave Mr. Anderson. You said it was 2.9 million. I think you said back in your replied. Is that back into the TDF or just back into the community generally?
My apologies, back into the community.
Okay, thank you. Some of it would be back into the development fund if they're renting hotel rooms and things of that nature.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Can we have a vote on that matter? We'll have,
I did
we'll have to
manage.
do a manual vote.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Councillor Kinnock.
So we'll do a hand vote as well. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, Council. That brings us
To agenda 8.4.1, motion by Councillors Gardy and Dufour, resolved that the report of the municipal services and design engineer and the solicitor dated April 8, 2024 concerning automated speed enforcement be received, and that council directs staff to pursue an agreement with the City of Toronto Joint Processing Centre for ASE offence processing, pursue an agreement with the Ministry of Transportation Ontario for access to license plate information for offending vehicles, develop automated speed enforcement site selection criteria, pursue an agreement with the Ministry of Attorney General for the required victim fine surcharge component that is paid by the notice recipient to the city, develop supporting administrative monetary penalty system bylaw policies and guidelines, refer staff complement increase requests to the 2025 budget, and refer one-time and ongoing operating costs to the 2025 budget.
Council stepped up. Different.
Okay.
Councilor Hollingsworth. Council, I assume there are questions on this. Ms. Bezuallen. We've got Mr. Perry and Mr. King here who are available.
I actually just have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I've received only positive comments and emails from constituents concerning this, especially those that live in the Wellington and Queen Street corridor and have children. We do see a lot of people going rather quickly, and hopefully this will help them understand and pay attention to the crosswalk at Churchill and Queen, because Carl's not here, no one ever does. So I think it's a great thing, especially in those areas. And also the other person that reached out to me is in the Holy Cross area along Bennett Boulevard, where they have a lot of issues. So thank you so much. I have seen them in Toronto, and I think, whatever we can do in terms of making sure motorists are keeping their speed down and having safety and having, taking advantage of technology is really important, investing in that. So thank you so much for bringing this forward. I know it's a lot of work, Dan and Jeff, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Councillor Bezoil and Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. I do have a question, but I just want to start off by saying to Councillor Bruni, the whole team on the Speed Force Task Force, the whole group has been working so hard on ensuring that we listen to the community's concerns about speed. And I assure you that everyone around the table, including the police that sit at the table, work and look at all sorts of different ideas to reduce speed. I would love to spend the next hour and tell you so much of the history, but I won't. But I just emphasize that thank you to the community for emailing us and calling us and telling us where the speeders are and telling us that they are concerned. So this brings me to my first question. Through you, Mayor, to Carl. Carl, this particular idea, how long have you been working on this idea to bring it to us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, this was an ideal that was brought forward through the task force. So, I mean, maybe Dan or Jeff could give us the exact date, but I would suggest it was, 8 or 9 months ago.
Okay, great. Which wasn't that long, and it's here on our table. And has a pilot ever been done elsewhere? Meaning that has another community in the report, I believe it does say this, but is there any other community that have basically done this with positive results?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, yes, it's been implemented in other communities. I'll let Dan come up and speak to the report since he's done the research more in depth than me and could probably give you a more wholesome answer.
Okay, great. And I do also want to emphasize that, Dan, you have done a lot of great work, and thank you on behalf of council for digging further into this. But if you can comment on other communities, have they done this before?
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. For you too, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hollingsworth. Yeah. Over 20 municipalities, large municipalities across Ontario have fairly successfully now. Municipalities have started off very small and ramped up. So some municipalities now have installed in municipalities, some larger like the city of Toronto.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Northern Ontario community has piloted this or something along this line?
With City of Greater Sudbury just with their automated speed enforcement. So they started with 6 mobile units. 6
mobiles. And correct me if I'm wrong, if I read this correctly, it's basically Sudbury, and just use Sudbury. I believe that the tickets they issued, I don't know if the revenue is the right word to use, but the money they collected really helped to offset the cost with this. Is that fair to say?
Their revenue, particularly in Sudbury, hasn't been just fairly new in their process, but other municipalities have used fractions for safety and other capital transportation.
Okay. And with regards to this is probably, if it's fair to say, one idea of many more ideas that are going to be brought to us to help reduce speed. Is that fair? Are you working on other ideas?
That's correct. Is it? 2 council meetings.
Okay, that, and last question, around the task force table, it's staff, city staff, but also we have police that have supported this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Again, I support this and I hope that my colleagues around this table will also support it. And I'll say it again, thank you to the community, thank you to our constituents for emailing us and calling us. We hear you and we're working on your concerns. Thank you.
Hollingsworth, Councillor Zagordo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Perry, just a couple of concerns, if you could assist with them. It seems like some of these pieces of equipment, has been reported even in the news recently, that are prone to vandalism. To what extent would the city of Sault Ste. Marie be responsible for the upkeep, and at what cost has that been determined?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Zagordo, all maintenance and associated with vandalism is all covered by the vendor. It's in contract, so there would be no cost to the city for that.
Just follow up, as with speeding tickets received from a police officer, how are insurance companies of speeders involved in this process, if at all?
Councillor Zagordo, I'm going to defer that to Mr. King, probably speak to that a little.
Councillor Zagordo, so as I understood your question, it has to do with how the administrative penalty that's for automated driver's insurance, is that correct? Yes. So essentially the way the ticket works is it's issued to the owner of the vehicle, so not necessarily the licensed driver of the motor vehicle. So that doesn't register as a moving violation against the individual. So that being said, it doesn't register demerit points, nor does it register against their driver. So that is my understanding of the document.
That's great. And then finally, if speeders are aware of where these pieces of equipment are located, could this not create a situation where quieter neighborhoods have increased traffic flow? In other words, speeders are avoiding the traps. Have any communities dealt with that situation at all?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Zagordo. Through our research, we didn't find anything in particular regarding trying to the automated speed enforcement by taking through streets. However, that is a possibility and it's something that staff is willing to investigate and deal with.
Okay, great. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Gordo, Councillor Bruni.
Couple questions and then I'll have comments to Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry, maybe you can explain the process with these cameras before you erect them, or what's the notice to the drivers?
To you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'll defer that.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Bruni, so there is legislation that speaks to how the municipality goes about erecting the cameras. It is supported by signage, and there is a 90-day window of time that signage needs to be in place for the activation of the automated speed enforcement cameras. From there, after, the idea would be that they would issue tickets. The proposed process would be through what's known as an AMP system. This would be a system where instead of the traditional provincial offense court system, there would be a two-tiered appeal process. The first one being if the individual chooses not to pay the ticket, screening officer would review and render a decision. If the individual that received the notice does not agree with that decision, it is then bumped up to a hearing officer, which is a third party, sort of like we saw today with the review decision, and that decision would be final. The individual would then to the offense notice. Should they fail to make payment of the offense notice, it can be registered as late, collected as a plate denial. So that is the means of attempting to collect once issued. Question or not?
Yeah, thank you. I got a follow-up if you don't mind. In the wording tonight, it said you pursue an agreement with the City of Toronto, Ministry of Transportation, also pursue agreement with the Ministry of Attorney General. What time period are we looking for? Like, is this overnight signatures or?
Mr. Mayor, this is not an overnight process. In the report, we said if all goes well, it would likely be 2 years before you would see it roll out. The reason being is there are quite a few agreements. Those agreements need to be put through the local level of government as well as the provincial level of government. Our understanding through the process is that certain agreements need to be signed and executed almost simultaneously so that the other party would entertain signing the agreement. So there are quite a few steps to take. Certainly approval tonight would not see these machines out tomorrow, if I could put that.
Okay, so the cost will be in the 2025 budget. Why not put it in the 2026 budget? It's going to be several years.
The hope is that if we can roll some of it out sooner, have the budget allocated to make that commitment. The reality is that with the volume being proposed, that workload and that volume of ticket through the existing provincial system is not able to work. So there is going to be a requirement of staff increase to support volume of charges that is forecasted.
Thank you. And my comment, Mr. Mayor, and we all know during the campaign season of last election, speed enforcement was one of the main topics that people had concerns with. So it was brought to council once elected, and a committee was formed, as Councillor Hollingsworth said, police services, city staff, Dan Perry, our chair, and the committee investigated what other options we have at hopefully a minimal cost. And basically, we reviewed other municipalities and agreed for this is the best one for cost effective. So it's presented in front of you. I know most of you have heard during the election regarding speed enforcement, and tonight we vote. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Councillor Spina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Few questions. Probably first for Mr. King, I would think. Let's call it a traditional provincial offense notice for speeding traditionally would be served by an officer at roadside. Traditionally, speeding would be what we would describe as a driver-only offense, meaning only the driver of the vehicle can be charged with that offense, not the owner of the vehicle. How does this legislation differ from that, or where does it differ from that?
The automated speed enforcement as opposed, I guess, an officer roadside holding a radar gun, getting a reading and pulling off or pulling it over, will read the license of the vehicle as it proceeds. I'll use the example of the school zone with the equipment set up. It will read that plate and radar that vehicle, and if it registers in excess of a speed, will generate a ticket that gets mailed to the registered owner of the vehicle's address. At which point in time, that individual is then called upon to elect the options on the ticket, one being payment or the screening officer says to object. Clearly, there is the risk to the municipality that they elect not to paying with the charge, in which case that's successful.
Thanks. And I guess more appropriately, my question is, what is the difference in legislation from a driver-only offense to now transitioning it to the owner of the vehicle? Or sorry, driver-only being only the driver can get the ticket to now the owner gets the ticket. Where's that legislation coming from?
Through Mr. Councillor Spina, sorry, I missed your question. The legislation is, it is the Highway Traffic Act. And it's amended regulation under there. That allows the municipality to rely on speed enforcement. And as you've alluded to, it is now the driver or not the driver, which is your normal traditional speeding ticket that would get the ticket. So let's say it's your vehicle and your 18 or 19-year-old child is driving that vehicle. They normally would get a ticket roadside from a police officer because they are the operator of the motor vehicle. In this instance, if it's that same individual using your vehicle to go through, it would be the owner, so yourself, that would receive a ticket. And with that, there is no demerit points associated with it or additional consequences that are normally found with that speeding ticket.
Right, so a traditional speeding ticket would accrue demerit points and potentially result in a potential license suspension if they accumulated to a certain point. Your description says no one would ever accumulate demerit points here, and as a result, no one would have a license suspension?
Through you, Mr. Councillor Speed, that's correct. So no one would receive a license suspension. That's where the deterrent component is focused on the monetary penalty itself, as well as failure to address that certificate could find that plate in denial later on.
Right, so if someone didn't pay the tickets, then the repercussions are the plates would be denied upon renewal?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, that's correct.
Okay. And I really appreciate the work that the task force did on this. I think they're thinking out of the box, doing a lot of things. I'm looking at this thinking our goal is to reduce speeders and really have a specific deterrent on those drivers that are speeding and a general deterrent on people who would be inclined to speed through areas. I find it hard to put that in my mind and say we're doing that, we're achieving that by being punitive against people who didn't even know that the vehicle was there and weren't even in the area. So I find it really hard to bring those two concepts together in my mind, that we're having a very specific and general deterrent on speeders when we're finding people who were never actually there. We're finding vehicles that we're finding people who own vehicles who never had any knowledge or consent to any kind of event happening. So I find that hard in my mind to put that together. I think from my perspective, the city's role in reducing and working to reduce speeding in the community is, I think, through environmental design, through engineering, through the building of streets in certain ways that can help to reduce the opportunities for vehicles to speed. And I think the enforcement of speeding lies with the police service, which we've just given the largest budget in history to, of nearly $40 million. I find it hard to now ask the citizens of the community to pay more to enforce speeding when we already have an organization that is supposed to be enforcing speeding. I think we should leave the enforcement up to that organization, and the design to the people here at this table and to the staff here that's really able and has the knowledge to design those streets and put those things in place. I appreciate that this is a really out of the box idea and a new idea that the task force brought forward. I think it's fantastic that they're thinking like this. My opinion is I think we leave enforcement up to the enforcement agency, design up to the design agencies, and move forward that way. Thank you.
Councillor Spina, Councillor Gardy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Whereas Councillor Spina, just to counter a couple of things that you mentioned, which were valid. I'm of the opinion that we can't deploy things fast enough to deal with the speeding issue in our community. People just need to slow down. I think something like this, though, it could, nail somebody who necessarily wasn't driving their car, makes the community more broadly responsible for the way that they drive in and around our community, especially in some of the zones where they're looking to deploy these. I'm not going to argue with you about the police budget. That being said, we also know that our police service is challenged by some other things that take up a lot of their time. So I'm really in favor of this, and I'm hopeful that a majority of council will support it. Thanks.
Any other councillors? Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to touch on one of the things that Councillor Spina said about road design. I think you're right, but I think that working in tandem with redesigning the roads, like redesigning the roads is a really expensive and huge undertaking. We can't just go and redesign every road in Sault Ste. Marie, but we can put a couple of automatic speed enforcements on there. And as far as Councillor Gardy's comments went, I couldn't agree more. I drive around the Sioux and people fly. It's like everyone is driving a rocket ship, and I don't know where everyone is trying to get to so quickly. But if everyone would just slow down, that would be wonderful. I do have one question. I think it's for Dan Perry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Perry. Is there any plan in place to curb the vandalism from happening to these units? And is it the unit that is going to be on the ground, like looks like a mailbox? Or is there an opportunity to have something that we can put up a bit higher to sort of avoid that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Sir Caputo, definitely still in the fairly stages of deciding what it's capable, right? Possible from what we have from other municipalities, that's been fairly responsive though, and units back.
Yeah, I just wonder if maybe we could get some cameras, like some eyes on the eyes to try and avoid it. But I don't know if that's something that staff has thought about. I know that it's pretty common wherever they're put up to unfortunately have vandalism happen. So those are my only questions. I totally support this. I hope that we put them out and no one speeds anymore. So thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor.
Just one quick question, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Perry. Dan, in all of your research, when you developed table 3 for net revenue, has it been the experience of other municipalities that they have been able to operate these speed cameras at a cost neutral or net revenue basis? Or has it been a mixed bag with some using levy dollars to subsidize the use of the cameras?
Through you, Mr. So for it looks like most municipalities have generated sort of revenue.
Are there any examples of ones that haven't?
Check, we'll get back.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for the report, Mr. Perry and Mr. King. I don't support this. I think that it's a lot of effort to enforce one of the provisions in the Highway Traffic Act exclusively. And it seems like a substantial undertaking with the hope of revenue, but seemingly, no consideration of vandalism, cutting them down, the requirement of Public Works to go probably put them back up, no cost factored in for that. Speeding is an issue. It should be enforced, I think, as Councillor Spina has said, through police services and reduced as an issue through environmental design as we get to those roads. So if we do extend Sackville, for example, I don't think it should be straight and flat. Curved roads or roads with parking on the sides are less conducive to speeding. And I think that this a lot of effort to achieve, probably not in fact achieve the what we're looking for it to achieve, at least not as widespread as I think council is hoping it would be achieved, the degree to which it would be achieved. So I don't support this, and I intend to vote against it. Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. If this is voted down, what happens to the committee?
I heard the committee say that they're bringing additional recommendations at future council meetings.
Just a procedure question. I see a gentleman in the gallery that had his hand up. I don't know if he has comments or if it's appropriate. I don't know procedure wise.
I don't believe there was a request.
I did not receive any.
And generally speaking, also asks the staff, not generally speaking, exclusively, council asks the questions of staff. And we accept comments on planning matters and written comments on regular agenda matters, but not delegations on regular where request to delegate hasn't been received.
Okay.
So vote on the matter. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 6-5.
Councillor Segura? Opposed? Councillor and Councillor Gardy. So that carries 6-5. With Mayor Shoemaker, Councillors Spina, Segordo, Kinnock, and Scott voting against.
That brings us to 9.1.
Agenda item 9.1, the physician recruitment report request. It's a motion by councillors Hollingsworth and Spina, whereas the community is in desperate need of physicians, and whereas the Physician Recruitment and Retention Committee has been working on increasing the number of doctors in Sault Ste. Marie since its inception. And whereas the community is interested in the success rate of the committee's and its efforts, now therefore be it resolved that a detailed report be given to council at a future council meeting outlining the recruitment rates, retention rates, the budget for the physician recruitment committee, and what the manager of physician recruitment sees as challenges and opportunities in recruitment strategies in the field of family medicine locally.
Councillor Hollington, your motion.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to say thank you for helping us to tweak it. And also thank you, Councillor Spina, for being the seconder. Very much appreciate that. I just want to make a few comments. First of all, I recognize that our staff and council around this table, and including our mayor, we are very concerned about our physicians in this community. We are concerned about the shortage. We are concerned about recruitment, and we are concerned about retention. Councillor Spina and I did not bring this forward to basically say that staff are not doing any work on this. Exact opposite. We brought this because we want the community to know that behind the scenes, the staff and other community leaders within basically Sault Ste. Marie are working very, very hard on retaining, attracting physicians. The purposes of this report to come back to us is to give us a benchmark where we stand right now on recruitment. And also it gives a chance for a manager of physician recruitment to highlight and outline what she is doing on basically retaining and attracting physicians. This is on our radar. This will, if I may say, will continue to be on our radar for some time because it is a concern of mine. It's if it's fair to say, concern of everyone around this table. So it's more like a progress report. It's a benchmark. It's a starting point. As we move forward, I'm hoping that in the future, this particular report will be ongoing so that we can keep our community, keep our constituents up to date. In addition, in the future, potentially, hopefully, we can also add on physician assistants and nurse practitioners, since those two categories are important as well. But for now, I just want to emphasize that the purpose of this report is to say to the community, we're working behind the scenes to make sure that we do have good health care in this community. And we are working with other healthcare leaders, such as the Surrey Hospital and others, to make sure that we do have the services and healthcare for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Spina, anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to support this. It's very clear Councillor Hollingsworth has a great passion for this every time we speak about this, which is quite often recently. I want to echo everything she said. I think everyone at this table has healthcare top of mind, and I'm happy to support her in this motion, and I'm happy she brought it forward and engaged so many people in conversation on this. So thank you for that. It's been very fruitful. Recognizing this is not all the function of City Council, but we do have a voice in that, and thank you for helping us be that voice.
Thank you. Council, any other questions or comments on this? Seeing none, we can have a vote on the matter. All in favor? That carries.
Agenda item 9.2. Got a motion by Councillors Caputo and Vezoalan, whereas the jury that heard the Carol Coulaton, Anastasia Kuzik, and Natalie Formerdum Inquest, the Renfrew County Inquest, issued 86 recommendations to prevent future deaths and delivered those recommendations to the province of Ontario. And whereas recommendation number 85 of the inquest is to include coercive control as defined in the Divorce Act as a criminal offense or as a type of assault under Section 265 of the Criminal Code. And whereas, according to experts, a perpetrator has privileged access to information about the target by virtue of the closeness of an intimate relationship, and as such is able to identify unique vulnerabilities that can be exploitive for coercive control. And whereas coordinating community responses to domestic violence, cites scholars and advocates in the field have consistently described intimate partner violence as both an expression of and an attempt to maintain power and control over intimate partners. And whereas in 2019, according to the Government of Canada, of the 107,810 people aged 15 and over who experienced intimate partner violence, 79% were women. 55% of women who experience physical or sexual intimate partner violence feared a partner at some point. Being afraid of a partner can indicate intimate partner violence that is more coercive, more severe, and more likely to reflect a pattern of abusive behaviors. And whereas between 2014 and 2019 in Canada, there were 497 victims of intimate partner homicide, and 80%, 400 victims, were women. And whereas while Indigenous women account for about 5% of all women in Canada, they accounted for 21% of women killed by an intimate partner between 2014 and 2019, 83 victims. In 2021, the rate of gender-related homicide of Indigenous women and girls was more than triple that of gender-related homicides of women and girls overall, 1.72 versus 0.54 per 100,000 women and girls. And whereas the Government of Canada names coercive control as one of the acts included in intimate partner violence, but does not include coercive control as an offence contained within the Criminal Code of Canada. And whereas Bill C-332, a private member's bill to amend the criminal code to create an offence of exercising coercive control of an intimate partner by engaging in a pattern of conduct that consists of any combination or any repeated instances of any of the following acts: using, attempting to use, or threatening to use violence against certain persons, coercing or attempting to coerce the intimate partner to engage in sexual activity, or engaging in other conduct that could reasonably be expected to cause the intimate partner to believe that their safety or the safety of a person known to them is threatened. Now, therefore, be it resolved, Sault Ste. Marie City Council express its support for Bill C-332, as well as call on the Government of Canada to support Bill C-332 and enact the necessary amendments to the Criminal Code of Canada to include coercive control of an intimate partner. Further, be it resolved that a copy of this motion be circulated to the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, the Honourable Dominic LeBlanc, Minister of Public Safety, the Honourable Patty Hajdu, Minister of Indigenous Services, the Honourable Mark Holland, Minister of Health, the Honourable Marcy, Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth, the Honourable Jenna Suds, Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, the Honourable Arif Farani, Minister of Justice, City of Sault Ste. Marie, MP Terry Sheehan, MP Laurel Collins, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and all Ontario municipalities.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I want to recognize before we go to Councillor Caputo that we've got Mr. Sweeney here, the father of Angie Sweeney and a fellow colleague of his, member of Angie's Angels, as well as Mr. Jennings, the father of Caitlin Jennings, who both are victims of intimate partner violence, of course. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Councillor Caputo, to speak to the motion.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank our city clerk for reading this I realize it's an extremely long motion. But I also think that the stats that are reflected within this motion are so powerful. It was really difficult after writing it to pull anything out. So I do thank you for allowing it all in, and I thank you for reading it. One part that I really want to focus on is that the Government of Canada names coercive control as one of the acts included in intimate partner violence, but does not include coercive control as an offense contained within the Criminal Code of Canada. And while I was perusing the internet today, I came across something that talked about that just last week celebrated 50 years since women were able to obtain a credit card without a male cosigner. 50. So up until 50 years ago, a woman could not even have financial independence to flee intimate partner violence if she needed to. 50 years is not that long ago. And that tells you something about the society that we live in. Coercive control has been socially acceptable. And to have it still not included in the criminal code begs the question, does the government of Canada believe that coercive control is still socially acceptable? Is it still socially acceptable to control a woman? So I think the answer is really simple, and getting there is really simple. We need to include these new things into the criminal code. Coercive control is dangerous and is often the beginning of a scary downward slope that can and ultimately has led to femicide. And sadly, April will mark 6 months since Angie Sweeney was taken from her family and friends and from this community. And that is just one name. That's just one. So I really want to thank Angie's Angels for their activism and for always including me in giving me the honor to bring these things forward, because we cannot bring her back, but we can continue to fight for her. And you have my promise that I will always continue to do that. I fight for myself. I fight for Renee. I fight for my little girl, Leo, and your little girl, Flora, and everybody moving forward. So as a woman, I'm really proud to bring this forward. As a community member, I'm really proud to work with all of Angie's Angels and you as well, Mr. Jennings. So one is one too many, and there have been way too many deaths. So thank you to MP Laurel Collins for bringing this forward. And I emphatically support this, and I hope our council will as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. Councillor Venezuela.
Thank you, Renee, Brian, and Dan for being here. Renee, it's good to see you, and Brian and Dan. Dan is actually heading down to Queen's Park on Wednesday for the reading of Bill 173, which hopefully Ontario will claim intimate partner violence an epidemic. Coercive control is something that I think not just should be in the criminal code, but it's something that we need to talk about. So that's, humiliation, degrading, dehumanizing, making threats, emotional abuse. All of these things are part of what this bill will bring part to the criminal code, which I think is really important. So subtle actions that then can turn into intimate partner violence. There were 89,000 cases of femicide in 2022 reported by the UN. 55% of those were done by an intimate partner. 133 women and girls die daily in our global environment as reported by the UN. So I'm proud to support everyone in this behind me. And I think it's important that we as a community make a point that this cannot happen, but also educate each other on what the signs are and what it is, and be a good neighbor. When we talk about it, it's also looking at other people that maybe you think might need help, and understanding that, especially we all work in groups, whether it's a workplace or a meeting or whatever, that's also come up, is recognizing the signs and giving people a place to go for help, and understanding that you can be that safe person to talk to. So a lot of things aren't okay. And I think it's time to have those uncomfortable conversations. And I really hope that the government of Canada does what the UN decided in 1993 to bring to fruition. It's about time. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Venezuela. Any other councillors, questions or comments on this? Councillor Gardy?
Yeah, it was just one question. I'm glad it was brought forward. I'm sure it will receive unanimous support. I just, and my support. I just have one question about the end there where it says the copy can be sent to all Ontario municipalities. I think it's a great idea. Is that something that's manageable?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, what we will do is take other resolutions that have been forwarded to us from other communities and use their mailing list of other municipalities. Unfortunately, we don't have a database that we know that we have all 400 and.
Right, that's all I was getting to. But yeah, of course, as many as we can get it to. Perfect, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gardy, any other councillors, questions or comments? Obviously, this has my full support, and anything we can do to prevent a future tragedy like the one that we experienced in the fall is unfortunately too late. But if we can prevent, it's too late to protect those in our community that were victims of intimate partner violence. But if we can help prevent people from becoming future victims of intimate partner violence, it'll have my full endorsements, as this does. All in favor? That carries unanimous.
That will bring us to agenda item 12. I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Dufour resolved that all bylaws under item 12 of the agenda under date April 8, 2020 be approved.
All in favor? That carries. A motion by Councillor Scott and Dufour resolved that this council move into closed session to discuss one item concerning a proposed property acquisition and a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to negotiations, and one item concerning solicitor-client privilege. Further be it resolved that should the said closed session be adjourned, the council may reconvene in closed session to continue to discuss the same matter without the need for a further authorizing resolution. All in favor?
And a motion by Councillor Scott and Bezo-Allen that this council now adjourn.
All in favor? That carries.